21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
My name's Ken, and I'm here to talk to you because there are specific mistakes the CEOs are making when they're trying to grow their companies. I mean, think about it. The VP of sales and sales people in your organization, they leave every 18 months. If that isn't a problem, I don't know what is. As someone who grew up in sales, from the very first job I had selling newspapers to straight out of college and doing nothing but selling and then running sales teams, I don't talk about these problems because I'm just trying to be a know-it-all. I talk about these problems because I've lived them. I've experienced them. I've tried to grow companies and I've tried to grow our team, and I've seen the revolving door that exists when you start talking about sales professionals. And then if you fast forward, now I'm in a career where I see it every day. We know based on our data that 50% of salespeople don't even have the skill sets to succeed in your industry or in sales at all. And that should terrify you about trying to build the sales for your company. Now look, it wasn't always this way. The world of sales has changed pretty significantly since 2020. Prior to that, and go back to the 90s, go back to 2000, maybe even 2010. And what you had was an environment where the salespeople, the sales leaders, the company held all of the information. So they had no choice but to talk to you. Now fast forward and bring it into 2010 to 2020 with the advent of the internet and how people got aggressive with putting all this, product and service information out in the world. Well, at that point, you started to see the scale flip. Now buyers were coming in smarter, more intelligent. They were able to actually flesh out what it was that they were looking for. And then 2020 hit and the world shut down. And now what's really happened is buyers are craving somebody who can actually help them see the problems that they want to solve and not just give them a product. And what most salespeople and companies do is they fell for this old crap called product-led growth. And they think, well, if I just make a good enough product, it'll sell itself. And those are the last words of the people who are on the bleeding edge with a fantastic product or service. They're now working for somebody else, talking about what could have been. My experiences growing companies really started back in the early 2000s. It was an awesome experience, and I tell people today it was one of the easiest jobs I ever had. Growing a company from $2 to $78 million in just 4 years. And people think I'm insane that could possibly be the easiest job I had. And I can tell you more about that later, but my career continued to go forward. And you would think, well, if that was so easy, Ken, then life's been pretty simple for you. Well, that all changed when I bought my first business in 2006. The Great Recession happened. I thought we had a great product. We were selling a lot of it, but we were selling things that were completely based on you having disposable income. And in 2011, I filed bankruptcy. And I had somebody come to my door at the beginning of December and tell me they had bought my house in an auction. My 12-year-old daughter was holding on to my leg. And I had to tell my family that we had to be out by the new year. So my experience in sales isn't just from doing it right. I've made all the mistakes and quite a few more that I wouldn't wish on anybody else. Now, I can tell you I didn't come through the bankruptcy easy. A lot of people think that you hit bankruptcy and that is your rock bottom. But I can tell you, you're still on the downslide. Man, you're on the downslide, and that rock bottom for me took another 2 years to find. But if we fast forward and we really talk about what that taught me, it taught me a number of lessons that really have helped us in our ability to work with more than 60 companies globally and help them improve their sales. And the biggest one was this. I'm the guy who knows what's at stake when you own a company or you run a company, because I've seen what failure looks like. I'm the guy who understands how that feels to rebuild your life and to try to put everybody else in front of you, because we all know owners get paid last. But it's that ability to connect with the real risk rather than making it such a formal thing, oh, here's a bullet point and a PowerPoint. But to understand the emotion of what's behind it in order to apply the rigor and the science of how to grow a company successfully so that you can exit, leave it for your family, or create generational wealth like many of our clients have. So hitting bottom was a rough point for me, because I'm that gregarious, outgoing extrovert normally, and I hadn't been for years. And I remember the moment that I stopped being a victim. I'm that guy who put me on a first interview for a job, which is what I was doing after sitting and working with a company for a while, but I was ready to get back in the game. I was ready to take the promotion. I was ready to run another company. And I'm that guy, if you put me on that first interview, you put me on that phone call, I'm going to tell you right now, if you say, Ken, we want to talk to you, well, I'm getting to the second call. And I'm getting to the second call 99% of the time. Except when I was 2.5 years out from my bankruptcy. Because at that moment, I was still a victim. I was still complaining and feeling like something had been done to me. And I was standing in front of my gym, taking a 15-minute call from a recruiter. And I heard it in my own voice. I heard that I was putting the blame on others. I heard that I wasn't owning my part in the responsibility. And that was the moment everything flipped. Because I went from being your lowly sales rep to taking 2 promotions, tripling my income, and ultimately running a sales team of more than 100 people. I'm often asked about the difference between those who do and those who want. And what I find is it's pretty simple, and it's also not easy. And it's a mindset difference, because the greatest movers, the people with a default for taking action, are the ones who say it's on me, my success or my failure no matter what happens, no matter what the environment is in my world, it's my decisions about that environment that will determine the outcome that I get to. And I'm going to own that. And that was that moment for me in that phone call. I decided it was no longer acceptable. Because I can tell you in our work with more than 60 companies, and we've worked with and helped 4 different companies become unicorns, which if you haven't heard that term, I mean, those are companies that are worth $1 billion and privately owned. I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff. But people always ask me, how do they become that thing? And the biggest difference is they have a mindset difference. They're going to own their success. They're going to have a default for action. And they won't accept people moving slow. One of the most significant problems that you're going to find trying to hire a VP of sales, trying to hire somebody who can run that sales team, a head of sales, is you're probably just trying to get it off your plate. And you think because they have the word sales in their title that they're going to be good at what they do. When the real difference is this, as we've spoken about, we have to have a default reaction and we have to be able to move quickly and with confidence. Now, knowing that the average, head of sales only lasts 18 months in an organization, let's think about how expensive that is for a CEO or a company. They take 3 to 4 months to get up to speed. You're paying a fat salary, probably negotiated some sort of forgivable draw in addition for their variable compensation. They're then coming in with these big strategic ideas. You're 6 months in and the revenue number hasn't moved. And at that point, what typically starts happening is the CEOs and the executive team start breathing on them. Why haven't things changed, Jeremy? Jan, why aren't we moving more? And then they start to spin a little bit. And all of a sudden, it's a micromanagement. Let's get after our team. Johnny's not making enough calls, and Susie isn't emailing enough people, and Fred doesn't have enough deals in his pipeline. And they start pushing. And that pressure does the exact opposite. It gives you inflated, normal, early numbers, but your customers feel it. You close less deals. You have less people interested. And at the 12-month mark, you as a CEO are starting to have questions. And you're talking to your board and your friends. I hired this head of sales. It can't be my fault. I hired a great person. It must be that his resume was wrong. It must be that he's better at selling himself in the interview than he is at selling our products and services. And you start wondering how fast you've got to help them exit the company. And that takes 6 months. But from there, what happens? You start the cycle all over again. You repeat the same mistakes. And then, after you've done it a few times, you typically call me. How do people know to call us when they've got the problem? They see things like margins are consolidating. They're starting to feel pricing pressure. They have to set sales goals based upon a wish. You're not actually predicting. You're not actually using math. You're not actually using formulas. You don't have KPIs that you feel comfortable to do sales math with. You don't know how many leads you need to contact to get how many first meetings, to get how many opportunities in the pipeline. And how many of those are going to close? As a VP of sales or a CEO, what I'm telling you is that there's a couple things going on here. Your time is short, and you need to have that default for action. Because if you're experiencing any of those problems, quite frankly, I know I've hammered the VP of sales, but if you're out there and you're listening, I'm just trying to tell you, you don't have a lot of time, man. You've got to get the help because nobody else understands how big the job is. So companies see those things, and typically they've run through a couple heads of sales. I don't know, maybe they weren't smart enough to give us a call, but they run through those heads of sales and then they say, we've got to do something different. And so I get the question often, well, Ken, how are you and RevHeat different? And it's the perfect question to ask, because how we're different is we believe sales is a science. 75% of your success and the growth of your company will come from systems and processes and data. Can you imagine waking up in the morning and looking at your pipeline and then having a 90% confidence level about exactly what your sales are going to be over the next 90 days? Because that's what the systems and processes help you bring. The other 25%, people ask me what that is. That's the art, man. You think art is the way of selling. It's 75% science, 25% art. You get the blocking and tackling right, and the 75%, the 25% is where you'll get those superstars, those individual contributors who will blow your mind with what they're able to sell and the relationships that they're able to build with their clients through consultative selling. So how do you know if you've got the science of sales right? Or if you've just got a team of artists? Here's one way you can think about it. We had a client and they had an individual seller named Asia as an example. Classic artist salesperson. And how do you know this? Because they have the ability to be really successful. They drive you absolutely insane because they can't follow any process you put in front of them. They hate doing entry in your computer and your CRM. There's nothing they'd rather do less of. But they still tend to crush their sales number. But you know in your heart of hearts, there isn't a single way in the world we would take that person, use how they do it, and create a sales model around it. Because that would be ridiculous. Well, you might have that person, but then in addition, you make the next mistake. Let's promote them into management. It's not reproducible. And then you've invoked the Peter principle and promoted somebody to their level of incompetence. So that's the first component. Do you have a bunch of artists that are successful? And I would say, in spite of themselves. Or how do you know if you've got the systems, the processes, and the science component of sales correct? Well, you can tell this by you might have a team of sellers who are all hitting 70% of quota. And if you're really honest with yourself, you don't see much special about that team. You look at them and they've got all of their stuff updated, and you have a very good process that starts with marketing, that scores your leads appropriately, that pushes them to the right people to have enough of the right conversations on a low ticket item. And what's interesting is in both scenarios, man, there's a lot of upside. If you can bring process into the artist world, I mean, think about Michelangelo. You don't have to know a lot about painting, but the one thing I've always been told is he was a fantastic technical painter before he became famous due to his art. So by combining those things, we have the ability to create an environment for success. And when you get it right and you absolutely put the pieces together, you get successes like some of our clients. We had a client who had a 2.5-year slide in revenue, on the verge of bankruptcy, had to absolutely miss a payroll for management because they didn't have the funds because their credit lines were tapped out. And they were able to grow in 18 months by 122%. That's 12.2 million in 18 months. And the longer game story, they went to more than 50 million and sold for a boatload of money, even though it was still the end of COVID. So when you get it right, you create an environment where everybody can be successful. And I'll tell you what was interesting about the case I just told you about. They only added 2 new salespeople to add 40 million or 400% in additional revenue, because you got the art and the science correct. How do you do that? How do you take a company who's struggling and put them in a position where they can experience success that 99% of their peers don't? Well, there's a process that you can follow to get this done. The very first thing that you need to understand is where your sales team is today. And the mistake most companies make is they try to assess that from their seat in the CEO or VP of sales chair. And they'll get out a Word document and, oh, Tina's strong, Johnny's not. The problem with that is it's a subjective view. The way to really figure out where your team is today so that you can understand whether or not you're driving to New York from Los Angeles or Orlando is you need to understand where they sit on the 21 core selling competencies. Because that's an objective measure that you can take against millions of other people. And we can start to remove your heart and your emotion from the actual analysis of where you are. Then you have the opportunity to really understand what you're starting with. From there, you absolutely have to be able to think about, now what do we do with the data? And the most important component of that is to prioritize where the impact can happen. Here's what you're going to find. Most people are going to tell you all the cool things, and you're going to feel like you're right. I call it the first level confirmation Google search. And it's our confirmation bias. And they're just going to say the words you like, oh, we need to have better prospecting. And we need to be better consultative sellers, and we need to sell value better. And you're going to say, that's exactly what I was thinking. But let me ask you, when's it going to pay? Because what we want to know is, when's it going to pay? And you need to boil those buckets into 3 categories. Those buckets need to go into short, medium, and long term so that you can understand the amount of effort and payoff that are going to go into it. And any really great turnaround or acceleration plan understands two things. When am I going to get my capital back? Everybody talks about ROI, but the truth is return of capital matters for most people. And then the ROI, and then we need the duration for both. So you must build a plan that addresses the specific needs of the sales organization that can help them win more today, become better critical thinkers and sellers in the intermediate term, and put your company in a position to have repeatable results over time. And the third component of that turnaround plan or that acceleration plan is the thing most organizations aren't doing. And that's sales coaching. Everybody thinks that coaching the team on the new systems process training is about telling them how to write a proposal or giving them pricing help. No, that's not coaching. Coaching's getting off a phone call with Johnny and then saying, Johnny, why didn't you ask this? What could you have asked different? Because 50% of any sales manager's time should be spent coaching the team. If you'll do those three things, you can have the same success as many of our clients. The question you've probably never expressed, but it's lingering in the back of your mind, and it's like this itch that you can't get to. Because most people have poor success hiring salespeople. Might be this. If I can't hire the perfect salesperson, can I build the perfect salesperson? And if I was going to, what would that look like? Well, we can play that out a little bit. First, they would have the proper mindset and belief system that would support them being successful in sales. Have you ever known what to do but felt uncomfortable doing it? Well, that's because your mind is at odds with the skill. So we don't want sellers who feel uncomfortable doing things that are actually productive in sales. Second, we want them to have an unwavering commitment to their own success. If it's moral, legal, or ethical, they'll do it, and they won't ask questions, and they won't put caveats on it. We want them to have the desire to succeed. Think about an athlete. We want the mindset, first of all. Second, we want the will or the grit. We want them to put the energy and the work in and care as much as we do. And then the third component, if you were going to build the perfect salesperson, is the tactical skill sets. Whether you're playing football in Europe and that's dribbling with your feet and shots on goal, or whether or not you're playing basketball in the United States and you're dribbling with your hands and it's shots on the basket. Those are the tactical skills that need to be there. And those skills have changed some today. Gartner says 74% of executive buyers want value from their salespeople in the process. The real crap part about that is only 47% of them feel like they're getting value. So we have to narrow that gap. They need to be consultative in their sales process. They need to know how to reach decision makers. They need to go beyond the idea of handling objections and become a trusted advisor or a corporate partner with their clients. Now, I know that sounds like I've painted this ridiculous scenario. How do you build that? Well, we build it every day. Because our research on almost 13,000 salespeople in 2023 in our report, State of Sales Skills in 2024, Engineering Excellence, it answered the question, can you build the perfect salesperson? And we found out it was a resounding yes. If you follow a specific process, you start with somebody who has a specific recipe and makeup in their own particular DNA and will to sell and their tactical competencies. And we can literally take somebody from a 50th percentile performer to the 85th percentile by following a specific path that enhances and grows those skill sets. So what do you do now? Now you've figured it out, right? Now you know. Now you have the ideas and now you have the understanding of, damn, we might actually need to do some things different. Well, the good news for you is I don't have anything to sell you today. But what I can do is provide you something that you can take away and actually put into action the moment you get it. Now, our strategic selling framework, which is based on my best-selling book, Strategic Selling Unleashed, and it's based on over $1 billion in client sales results. It's based on building 4 unicorns. I don't know anyone else who's done that, to be quite honest. And it breaks down exactly how you need to think about selling to other companies. It'll talk to you about consultative selling, and it'll show you a scoring system, believe it or not, that can actually triple and quadruple the win rates that you have on new business. It's been known to add hundreds of millions for specific companies. For one of our clients, it literally allowed them to sell the company for $250 million. And that was only 51% of the company. Generational wealth is what the right structure and the right sales system and the right mindset can get you. So what I would tell you is it's for you. I want you to have this. I want you to have our strategic selling framework. And I want you to take it back and I want you to get into it. I want you to compare it to everything you're doing today. And if you want to apply it, apply it. If you want to get the book, get the book. If you want help, make a phone call, send an email. But I live and work on the kind of things like this. I get goosebumps when I tell the stories about the sales rep who went from a performance improvement plan on the verge of being fired to being the #1 salesperson in the world for their company just 3 years later and selling $21.7 million. I live for those moments. I live for bringing those people up and allowing them to be able to make the choices with their family. Do they want their spouse to work? Do they want their kids in a better school district? Do they want to move out of the country? Because I didn't have those choices when I had to file bankruptcy. And so I understand at the end of the day that independence is about choices. And I know that if I can help you and I can help other companies and I can help individuals understand how to connect better with their clients, serve them better, and win more deals, that I'm doing something great for the world that I can be proud of. So pick up our strategic selling framework, get after it, and I promise you, you'll see results like you've never seen before.
"21st Century Entrepreneurship" with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast. A gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskorik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.